Welcome to The Most Mindset, where you'll hear real conversations about mindset, mortgages, and mastery for loan officers and originators who have outgrown being undervalued and underpaid. Here's your host, Michael Most.
Welcome. So it's Michael Most with The Most Mindset. I'm here today with Chris Pessy, not just someone that works on the team, but Chris has become, through work, a pretty close friend of mine. So welcome, Chris. Really glad to have you today.
Thanks for having me, Michael. Good to see you.
Yeah, you as well, my friend. Just want to get started. Let's start with the very, very beginning. I wanted to just share with everyone watching today how our relationship has developed over time from working together, but really focus a little bit more on you. So, as always, why don't we just start with a little intro, background? You know, what got you in the mortgage industry? Was this something you dreamed about as a kid? Was it either an astronaut or mortgage guy, right? Like, what order did it go in and how'd you get here, right? So like what got you into the business, a little bit of intro and background as to how you got to being here today.
Great. Awesome. Yeah, sure. Thank you. And thanks again for having me, Michael. So California native, born in Southern California, which is where we're based out of, and moved up to San Francisco for college. Actually did not want to become an astronaut, but who knows, still got some time. Was introduced into the mortgage world after the .com bomb and was trained on how to do mortgage by a guy similar to you, somebody that was very open-hearted, open-minded, and also very, very smart in the mortgage world. And so I kind of catapulted in with, his name was Calvin. And I spent the last 25 years through working from brokers to small banks to mid-sized banks to, as we call it, the Death Star, Wells Fargo. Sorry if anybody's watching at Wells. And yeah, I'm 50 now and just happy to become your friend. Number one, I'm very big on energy. And as you know, and have gotten to know me, I felt very supported by you. And it's been great so far. So that's where I'm at
Awesome.
now.
So, but going back, so you're a kid or you're in college. What do you want to do when you grew up? Like someone would have asked you in college, what do you want to be when you grow up? What was your original plan before
Yeah.
you fell into this?
So left and right brain, very big in health and fitness. So I kind of wanted to go that direction, but obviously this was many years ago. So we didn't have the technology and the formats and the platforms we do now. So I ended up I wanted to become a designer. So I actually went to school for industrial design. I got my degree, Bachelor of Arts of Industrial Arts in San Francisco. And I wanted to build cars for Mercedes-Benz. That's what I wanted to do originally.
Wow, nice.
Yeah.
Have you ever designed or played with that on the side as a hobby or no?
No, my first job, this is when the .com was popping. So I took a job as a designer with building websites, and that lasted about a year. And then, the .bomb happened and I was unemployable. All these other, senior designers were also, trying to get jobs. That's when Calvin rolled up and said, "Hey man, I see you. You walk around the building all the time. Don't you have a job?" I said, "Not really." And he goes, "Yeah, well, like, what about mortgage? You do mortgage?" I said, "I didn't go to school for mortgage." And that was it. He gave me a position for 6 months, training me. We used to watch Boiler Room in our office, for Boiler Room.
Sure.
Whenever we get an app in, I'd have to sit, yell Reco, and before client calls, I'd do push-ups and all that crazy stuff. So I was still able to fulfill that health and wellness routine as a mortgage originator.
That's phenomenal. You talk to a lot of people in the industry. I get this all the time, and I'm sure you do too. When you talk to most people in the industry and you ask them how they got into the industry, I would say almost everyone's story is almost identical. Everyone's like, I met a guy who was doing mortgages, and then he was like, well, why don't you just come work here? And the truth is that the barrier to entry, especially when we got in, was significantly easier. Now there's a lot more testing and things of that nature. But at the time, a lot of the stories you probably have heard, I'm just curious if I'm jogging your memory. Like you meet a guy and he's like, well, I met someone, he was driving a Mercedes or a really expensive car. And I was like, yo,
Yeah.
what's going on? Like, you're bowling. He's like,
Yeah.
oh, I do mortgages. And you're like,
Yeah.
you do what? Like, what is that? Right. So I don't know if you had a similar scenario like that. Was there anything fun like getting in when you first got into the business?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. For me, it was about flat screen TVs. And Calvin had the first flat screen TV on his wall. And I just thought that was my Ferrari for me, right? I mean, I guess I should have maybe aimed higher. And eventually we got to these points in our lives, in our success. But for me, it was that. And he said, well, you want one of these? He's like, you close this amount, I'll buy you one. And it also taught me to shoot for the stars and not just, one level of the hemisphere because he was driving around in a fancy car.
Right.
But that was it. It was the TV. I had remember we had those big box TVs and I was just like, oh, I really want one of those flat screen TVs. So not a Ferrari, but yeah, that
Well,
was it.
I give Calvin a lot of credit because when I think back to when I got into the industry, I got hired more in the back office, and I did post closing in a closing department. And then the woman who hired me left, started her own company, and she asked me to take over. And I didn't have a Calvin. I walked into
Mm.
the office with the owners, and they told me, they said, "Guess what? We're going to get you a lease, a Nissan Maxima." This is like 2000. They go,
Yeah,
as like a promotion, we're gonna get you a lease for 3 years on a Nissan Maxima. And it's
nice.
funny, we're both in sales so many years later. I didn't want a Maxima. I didn't want a car. I was living in Brooklyn at the time, and taking a subway was about a third of the commute. And it was fine. And you got to meet strangers, which I kind of like from an energy standpoint. So it's funny, like the owners of the company I was at, like made this assumption that I'd want that versus Calvin. It sounds like it was a little more down to earth and asked you what you do like, which turned out to be that flat screen TV. So that's pretty
And,
cool.
and, and I'll never forget this. That's an awesome story. You probably made a ton of clients on that subway, like authentic connections. I mean, that's where I know you. You're like, I got half my business when I started on that subway. I'm not taking this Nissan. No, but I remember I was making, if I could talk now, I was making like 40 grand working for Nextcard, the first company to do a digital online application for a credit card. And I'll never forget when I made that like my first 6 months. As I was learning, like he was paying me 2 grand a month to learn, and he was incentivizing me. And then when I got to a certain point, fast forward, I made 100 grand in a month. I was like, wow, this is awesome. I'm my own boss. I'm an entrepreneur. Yes, I'm printing loan docs in a home office. It's like the size of a kitchen. And we're going to the trans box and shipping out loans. But it builds character, it builds integrity. You're helping people and you're free. You can work from Italy. And that's the kind of guys that you and I are, is that like we're so committed to excellence and providing the level. And I'm not trying to sound salesy here, but I really live this and I walk this walk. And I was in Italy with my mom in July. She's like, why are you up till 3 a.m? It's because I like this client. We have a mutually respectful relationship, and she knows I'm going to get it done. Right. And that's why I loved what Calvin taught me. And he taught me that I could go as high as I want.
So that's a good segue into whether it's wellness and health, and or was there like a job you had as a kid or prior to mortgages that you took that experience and have been able to apply it to mortgages, and or your life passion of whether it's design, wellness, and health? What outside sources do you use that you think really make you as successful as you are in this industry?
Just being in control of your own mental, physical, and spiritual space and staying true to that. When I was working a 9 to 5 before mortgage, whether that was, working for Safeway or working for, whatever it was, you can't just go, okay, you know what? I've been working 6 hours. I need to tap out and go to the gym, or I need to go for a walk on the beach or do whatever it is to reset. Because resetting is so important to be able to operate at the levels that we do, right? And work the hours and commit. So that taught me like really just being an entrepreneur, I guess, is the takeaway. All of those jobs combined leading up to being an entrepreneur with Calvin, basically, and being able to stay balanced. And, I'll take a break every 90 minutes and get up and go for a walk and do that, because that just improves your output, the level of your output when you stay balanced. And me, I'm yoga 3 days a week, I'm gym 6 days a week, and I'm still pulling California and Florida business, right? So I think that those jobs really taught me the importance of being able to just, be the master of my future, if you will, and stay balanced.
What year was that you got into the industry, if I can ask?
I think it was 2002, early 2003.
Got it. So, in your humble opinion, and I'm sure it's been a little bit of a blur, right? Over 20 years doing this, how have you seen how the industry changed so much from that time all the way to the collapse of '08 to
Uh-huh.
rebuilding in 2010 to 12, couple of refi booms in the middle, all the way through COVID, post COVID?
Uh-huh.
Like, how have you been able to ride these waves and stay consistent in your production throughout all these changes? And I guess the second part to the question is, which is your favorite part of all of it? You know, if you can go back, if the industry can go back to being one of those timelines, which would it be?
Well, those are good questions. I think a lot of market compression, as we've seen, as you know, IMBs buy up other IMBs and big banks consolidate and all that. It's been challenging at times, especially '08, right? I remember rolling my desk out on a chair when they came in and turned the lights off, right? I think the compression, if you are really passionate about what we do, and that is helping people and having the most options and having more yeses, being able to say yes more than no, because people like to hear yes and not no. And I think that the compression was good because I think it was after 2008, 9, we went from like 75,000 mortgage originators to like 35,000, right? So, you know, the cream always rises to the top. And if you're really authentically committed to this, to ride those waves, you just take, I'll be totally honest with you, you take time, you keep consistent. Consistency is everything, but you have a little more time when we're riding that wave down to just, you know, maybe take that 1 week off or that 2 weeks off, because when the business is really going, you're a lot like me. Like you want to do more, you want to be better, right? So I
Sure.
think that's kind of the takeaway. And then you add in all the technology that we have now. I mean, you're so great with getting on the calls with the team and showing. And it's just the pro tips. I use that constantly in my discovery calls. Like, we're advisors. We're not just rate quoters. Like, you're going to hear pro tip a lot. And one of the pro tips, all the pro tips you sprinkle into our lives throughout our calls with ChatGPT and this and that, it makes doing what we do not just a little bit easier, but a lot easier, so we can get down to really getting to know the client and not just what this transaction is going to do for their lives, but how we can support them and serve them through in their entire lives. And not most people talk about that. Right. So I know that was a long-winded answer. What was the second question? Yeah.
Well, no, I think you answered it best, which is, you know, that on that downside, which was the second part of which timeline would you like to go back to?
Mm,
Let me ask
yeah.
you. Let me ask you for like something funny, and I'll give you a quick so you could like think about like your funniest story in the 20 plus years you're doing it, or and it doesn't have to be necessarily an interaction with someone, but like something like really stands out for you. So I'll give you mine for a quick like reference, and you can give me anything that comes top of the mind to you. So I remember, and you were just joking how like, yeah, I like to take the train because I like to meet people, and I would just try to pick up business or whatever it was. I'm high energy, really like people. But I'll never forget that I was in one of these sales meetings. And I don't even remember who the salesperson was. I just remember the back end of the story. And they were like, you have to know how to take an application on the back of a napkin. I remember
Mm,
being like, what does that actually mean? Because I'm a pretty literal guy. And I
mm-hmm,
said, back of a napkin, like, really? Take a pen and a paper on the back of a napkin?
mm-hmm,
And they were like, if you're like sitting on a train or you're sitting with someone at a barber shop and this guy like starts talking to you, can you do that? And I remember I took out a 1003 at the time, an application, and I kind of remembered and memorized, and we do thousands of these, like just the visual in my head of all the sections going
mm-hmm,
from property to the property type, whether it's a purchase refi, into the job into the assets into the the REOs into any judgments and stuff like that. And then you kind of have a full picture. So
mm-hmm,
I'm sitting at a barber shop and I'm in a barber chair and the guy next to me like starts talking to me and he goes, what do you do for a living? And I said, I'm actually in mortgages. And he goes, oh, I want to run something by you. And I like froze. I'm maybe like a year or two into the business. And I froze and I was like, oh my God, this is really happening. I'm actually going to take a back of the napkin application, which I had mentally prepared for in some weird kind of ways. That was my story. Anything that like reminds you of like this aha moment younger in your career or something that just like really was fun for you?
You know, this is okay. Thank you for the story. Mine is very similar, and it actually has a lot of roots in what UAMCO offers, where I'm at now. I think it was 2017. I was with my first bank, Home Street, and I got to know we had, we had agency, we had it was kind of an amalgamation of like portfolio, IMB, and an agency, right? And I got really close with the woman that approves all of our portfolio. So that's what really lit me up, because I can now wrap a common sense blanket around, somebody's financial picture and what their dreams are, and how can I bridge that gap where most people say no and we can say yes. And I'll never forget, I was actually with this gentleman, and it's the same thing. He goes, well, we're at a dinner, and he goes, well, I've been trying to buy this house, and these are all the no's I've been getting. And I'm like, well, tell me a little bit more about that. I got curious, this, you just, why the no's? And I never forget, I picked up the phone and I called her, and she answered, and she said, okay, tell me what you're trying to do with the income, the assets, SREO. I went through it, and she said, if you paper this up, I'm approving this loan right now and on an exception. And there was a home that they were really interested in. And I said, oh my God, I just got an approval on a phone call. This is so cool. Like that entrepreneurship, I get goosebumps saying this. Like I was able during the dinner, and you know me, I love hosting. That's where we shine, is when we really get to know people. And I said, I got you a deal. And he goes, what? On a phone call? I said, well, we got to paper it up. I have to make sure, but like, I'm trusting that everything you're telling me is right. We'll paper it up and we'll get it done. So I
Yeah.
feel like I don't have that direct call yet, but I have that person with you. And you've been very gracious to help me kind of do the same thing, basically, with some variations of that. But
For sure. And look, you've learned this, probably taking a lot of hard bumps in the process, but you definitely, as you mentioned before, one of the greatest things about you and your energy is you approach all of this of how can I give and how can I help before how can I receive and how can I get, right?
absolutely.
And then that's just your personality, which shines through. We're all grateful that you're in this industry, and then the people that are just friends with you, which is really like a segue into like the next thing I want to just ask you about, like, how do you build your relationships? How do you build your relationships from scratch, from cold? How do you build them to strong relationships? Maybe you could even touch upon, I remember the first time we met, it was one of the first notes I took on you, this whole restaurant segue, dinners that you do and stuff. Tell me, explain to me like what you do, because it's kind of your brand, and it's really been successful for you. So tell me a little bit about.
So for me, and thank you for that. That's a very nice compliment. And it's also how I walk my walk, not just talk my talk, right? I feel very blessed to have a mother that brought me up to trust my gut, trust my intention, my intuition, and put the intentions out into the universe for what I want and how I can support people, but always lead with love and lead with what can I do for them. Always give, like you said, before you ask for anything. And there are some relationships I've gone through that I've never asked for anything. And I like to, number one, on the restaurant, I like to invest in what I'm passionate about. And I think that when you can align people with people's passions, whether that be, hospitality, food, enjoying a meal, music, listening to Andrea Bocelli in Italy, whatever that is, that's where the real connections happen. It's not, I do this for you, you do this for me. It's more of, hey, how can we become better friends and closer friends? And I just happen to be a freaking pro at mortgage. Maybe we can help each other, or maybe I can help you there. And that's kind of how it is. It's a lot of energy, but it's really commonalities. And I'll do this on an initial call with it, even if I just get a referral and I don't have the opportunity to meet them at a restaurant or a cafe. I'll just say, tell me a little bit about yourself. I'll get to know them, and I'll find a connection point or a thread, and I can go, oh, I'm from here, and you do this as well too. You really authentically get to know people and appreciate the opportunity that we have this time together on this short journey to even have this conversation. And whether or not we're going to do business or not, let's, I guess the underlining point here is just try and be a good person. And if you become friends, it just naturally happens that you do business because you're good at what you do.
Yeah, and it's a lot more authentic, and it comes across that way, for sure. Someone starting out new in the industry, what advice would you give them, considering that it's 2025, new comes to the industry? What would you tell them to do? Because you can't really bottle up the 20 plus years you have, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you have to fast track them or just advise them in today's world of mortgage, plus the
Mm-hmm.
world that we live in today, which is pretty disconnected. So that's why I'm really backing off of, like, you and I are both relationship guys, but it's interesting how the world is kind of segueing into a non-relationship kind of place.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
And right. So tell me a little bit about that. Like, what would you advise someone?
Number one is, well, it depends on where they're at in their life trajectory, right? That's number one. And the advice would be, really get clear about what you want and how you want to live your life day to day. Be prepared to really put a lot of time in, but also know that the tools are here to really, like what you and I went through when we were younger. Like we had to handwrite applications, right? We had to print rate sheets and all that. So the technology and the support is there. So really get clear about what you want, be prepared to work the hours, but the reward is there. If you're comfortable with the ups and downs of the industry and you're in it for the long run, you have to be able to ride the wave up and ride the wave down. But there's pluses and minuses to both of those, because when you're pumping and you're doing 15 loans a month, you're not sleeping much, right? Like we talked about, when you're down to 5 or whatever, just make time for yourself and know that it always comes back, right? And that's just the way life is. But it's a very rewarding profession, in my opinion, because if you are an entrepreneur at heart, it's going to feed that part of you, right? And you should never, just me, I never want it to be just, okay, you're going to make 200K a year or 400K a year. You're going to clock in and clock out, right? I wanted to be able to go here and be able to keep my health and wellness balance, which you can, but make sure you take time and set the reminders, drink your water, go to the gym, go for a walk, clear your head, reset, and then get on that call with that gazillionaire and try and go close that deal, or that teacher that you really want to help, because nobody can get them approved and you want to see that person succeed and win that dream home for their family. I've worked with musicians. I took a year to get a gentleman approved, work with his CPA. I had to work and help him, just guide him to get ready as a self-employed guy who wanted to buy a home for him and his wife and his kid. And a year and a half later, we closed the deal, and I called him and he was in Tulum. I'll never forget this. And he was crying. He said, everybody gave up on me. So for me, it's not just about closing the big deals. It's about that helping people. And you get that with what we do, right? So I'm still thumbs up for our industry, even though it's been a rough couple of years. I think we're on our way of really getting back in it.
That's a good segue into AI for a second, because I know that you're pretty well versed, spend a lot of time on it. Tell me how, when you talk about tools and resources, what are you using AI on a day to day? How are you finding it to be efficient in helping you, whether sustain or grow your business today?
Well, as we know, like AI is the most rapidly, expanding universe, and it's hard to stay grounded in this world and what we do, because it's like, okay, do I go LinkedIn? Do I do TikTok? Do I do YouTube? Do I do this? So find your primary focus. How I've been using AI is, instead of going the old spreadsheet way, every single ROI scenario and every single way to structure a loan, whether it's low to high down payment, everything goes into AI now. And then you've got it all saved in your AI, in your GPT or whatever you use. And it literally takes an hour's worth of work or 40 minutes worth of work, and it gets it down to this, right? And then it's just rinse and repeat. And then you provide that to the client. So it's really helped a lot. And we're still just scratching the surface, right? So as a producer day to day running analysis, that's how I utilize AI 100%. Like I was using the same spreadsheet for a decade, right? But it worked. And you also have to remember to not give, like you have to make it simplified for folks, and AI really helps you with that, because you can adjust it on the fly, as you know.
Sure.
For marketing, same thing. It's learning now which CRMs are integrating AI, and staying, just as you know, in front of your client as much as you can, because to your point, people are just getting bombarded with information. So it's like you either sink or swim. You don't want to be a high pressure person, but they just want to know you're there. So it's using the AI to design a bot to where, instead of just calling, you can literally make a video of yourself just giving a market update for 60 seconds. You put it in the AI, and it doesn't send a text. It sends a video of you talking, and the CRM will pull the name from that person, right? And it'll change your lips to say that person's name, and it'll be a personalized bot of you for 60 seconds that gives the market update, but you don't have to call or send a video to 5,000 people, right? That's kind of where we're going with AI. And there's different levels of doing that, like if it's a client that you've known for a long time versus a new person. But yeah, it's crazy. It's amazing. And that's why, for folks getting into the industry, I love that, because like your trajectory to really become the best on a quicker, with AI is just incredible.
Yeah, it's also a great resource for people, as I would say, our generation of people that have been doing this for 20 plus years and got into industries in the late 90s, early 2000s, right? As you know, I recruit and we have a pretty big team and we're only going to continue to grow it. Whenever I talk to, let's say, a recruit, for example, always mentally, you're kind of having a conversation with someone of like, okay, what are your pain points? How do I make this better for you? And at some point, it tends to come down to a money piece at some point.
Hmm.
Like, okay, so at your current place, this is your comp plan, and here the comp plan would be this. You can have this conversation until the cows come home, but it doesn't really visualize it or put it together. And you can have that same conversation, throw it into ChatGPT or Grok or whoever, and they put together like an Excel spreadsheet to your point. And it's like, okay, well, here it is visually. If you tell me
Nice.
how much you do here and how much you there. Now, I've been having that conversation with people for months, visually showing it to them by just playing on ChatGPT for like 5 minutes. Before we had our call, maybe a half hour before, I was on the phone with Al, the owner at UAMCO, and I was telling him, I was like, yeah, I'm really having a lot of fun with this like spreadsheet and whatever. I said, before I go any further, you probably have one because he's recruited over 150 people to the company. And he goes,
Wow.
no. And this is what he tells me. He says, I love spreadsheets, but I kind of do it on the fly. And I'm like, Al,
Mm.
like, why don't you just have a template? And he's like, he goes, we should. He's like, send me what you're like putting together. So the message I'm trying to get is like, I find that what ChatGPT is doing and what AI is doing is taking people with the wisdom and the years of experience like you and I have and consolidating it into a more articulate, cleaner version of the
Right.
messaging trying to get out to people. So
Well said. Yeah.
my question for you though is you and I met. I think you've been at least 6 months to almost a year with me now. That was you and I originally met. We both worked at a former company together. And I was like, hey, uh, would you entertain us? I think we actually spoke a handful of times and never really connected. And then there was a point where we did connect and start talking. Tell me a little bit about that journey for you from the time you met me to an interaction all the way to like, was there a pain point? Like, what made you
Mm.
then like really want to look into this model differently? And then maybe segue into what was that like for you from getting here out of
Sure.
the IMD world into the broker world that we're in, some pluses and minuses, because that's been a shift for you for sure in the
Yeah,
last.
yeah. Yeah, I think there's so many ways to answer this because you've been so helpful. And I think number one is I always trust my gut. So as a human being, I trusted everything you were saying, even though we just met. So I can tell you that that trusted gut feeling ended up being perfect, right? So yeah, so I mean that's a lot of it after all these years is like anybody can say what somebody wants to hear, but can they deliver on what they've said? So
Walk
the
me through
number
some of
one.
the sorry, walk me through some of the like the visual, like
Oh
at
yeah,
a it's like,
I'm getting there. I'm getting there. I'm
okay,
telling
sorry.
you the number one. If I no, no, it's fine. If it like because we're getting bombarded by all these offers and all these platforms, and for me it was a big. You helped with the, and I'll get to what ended up happening when I started. The mental shift around I was programmed right from the retail side to the IMB side to being like you have one toolbox, you have one comp structure, you have not a very wide net to cast to help people, and you have no control really of you know your income and this and that and all these things, right? And you helped me to reprogram and shift my mindset in a very very understandable clear way, um to where I was like, okay, let's go, right? Like, and again, there was a trust and a transparency with you that I really appreciated. And then when I got into the field, it was like, whoa, it's almost like you're at Disney World and you don't know what ride to go on first. You know it's good, but you're scared shitless. You're like, this is gonna be so fun, but do I go on this roller coaster? So you've been very helpful and always available when, even to the point to where I have something I can't figure out because again, I've been in this box, right?
Sure.
And slowly we're doing this. And you've been very helpful with helping me strategize these solutions so I can provide clarity and transparency to my customers, right? And it's been amazing because what I tell folks now, especially my partners, real estate partners, the financial advisors, they're like, oh, can you do this? Can you do this? And I said, I'm going to repeat this again, but there's pretty much no client I can't help provide a solution to.
So powerful.
There's no client and no piece of collateral that we can't 99% of the time get a solution for. It might not be the best out there, but it will get them into something they want. And then we can figure out how the rest of it plays out next year so we can get them into what they want if it's an income-based thing. So it's like, it's just this like amazing solutions forward, and with you kind of driving this train. And I use that when I talk to clients. I'm the driver. All these caboose, that's all the lenders and investors you have access to with me and with us. And we are on this together. We're going to figure out which one it is that's going to solve what you need and with the best rates and all that. And I don't even talk about rates that much anymore. And you were so genius in teaching me that, because when you're with a big IMB, you have one rate, you have one solution, and you lose half the business, honestly. So it's been really refreshing. It's been empowering. I just feel super grateful that the universe brought us together, man.
I appreciate that. Tell me, quick, and just share with with all the viewers eventually, and this will go out to your network as well, obviously. Tell me like a success story from a deal that you've been able to accomplish here that I wouldn't say that was pretty challenging. You were maybe up front worried about, but you got through it. Like,
Mhm.
give us some of the details on a real success story that makes you feel good about being on this platform.
Oh, there's quite a bit. I'll give you two because the first one's really quick. And the first one was we had a file that a purchase that went from submission to close in 6 days, and that was unheard of. That included an appraisal, by the way, not a PIW, but a full on appraisal. That was number one. Number two was where I put my I'm not a leader in any sense, but you put your strategist hat on, and I engaged you actually, and you helped me wrap my head around this. But it was a common sense deal. It was realtor calls me, says this client is maxed out at 2 million. I need to get this borrower up to 2.5 to get them exactly what they want, so they're happy what coming in that door every day. The challenge was their previous lender couldn't stitch together a bonus income from a private company into a new job. It was a publicly traded company, and they had RSU income, and they'd only gotten one bonus sign on, right? And they were able to actually stitch together the bonus and 24-month average it out, and we got them up to 2.5 million, and that was it. It was like, wow. And I called you, I'll never forget, and you're like, we got a spot for that. We do. So again, it's almost like it's an excitement level because we're able to, number one, you are, you're a hero to your realtor partner. They closed the deal and your client got exactly what they want. They got a great rate and they were able to get into their dream home. And that happened within a month of their application coming in. It was great.
It's amazing. One of the things that you mentioned there, I'm going to put you on the spot here for a second in a good way. You mentioned like all the different hats you wear. And from the first time I met you, so you have a brand, Chris. And I think it comes from because your V card that like shows up on your phone, like comes across. And the first time I'd asked you this before, like, what was your moment of like, oh, I just met
Yeah.
Michael? Like for me, I met Chris
Yeah.
Pessy. I was connected to you. I was trying to get a hold of you, I remember, and I'd been texting or leaving you messages. And every time on your iPhone, it shows up, and there's Chris in his hat. So I would love you to even share with everyone this hat that we're talking about. Give me a little background of what got you into this. How does this describe you? How does it bring out the biggest part of your personality?
Oh, there's a lot to that. You're funny. I love it. And what's funny is I almost changed that photo ID on my digital card, but a partner I work with in LA was like, no, that's Chris Pessy. Because when I was with the Wells Fargos of the world, it's like this, and I didn't know how you wanted me to come to the interview, so I figured I'd bring the hat just in case. But I used to have to go to to my meetings, the big banks, and it was, I always say, you hear folks say, oh, I cut my teeth at this company. I always say I cut my teeth and I lost my hair in retail banking, and they just lose it. But I've always worn hats. It's kind of it complements just how I like to, how I want people to perceive me, because it's a style thing, right? So this is when I'm typically out there, this is kind of what I rock. you know.
And
So
you rock it well.
and thank you. And it can go with a suit. It's very versatile, but this is kind of like when I feel my spirit animal is really coming to life. And I've always worn hats, man. I have 42 hats. So I just, yeah. And if I go out, when I'm in my Florida home, if I go out without a hat, nobody recognizes me. They're like, "Who are you? You can't get in." I'm like, I'm a partner in the restaurant group. Chris?
Well, that's phenomenal. I want to thank you for this. This was amazing, Chris. Just going down this journey and spending time with you today, and you making the time means so much to me. I feel that our friendship that started with a guy looking just like you on this camera that had a really cool hat. I was like, I got to get to know this guy. Whatever color
You're
it is, like
awesome.
it's going to be. And it's been a fun journey along the
It
way, and I
has.
hope it only continues. The amount of gratitude that you have, not just for Calvin that you mentioned a couple of times today and the friendship you have. I've known you on the level where I think at least once or twice I've caught you like away on vacation or your mom comes to visit you and you could tell how that family dynamic is such an
Yeah.
important part of who you are, and that beautiful relationship you do have with your mom is something that I learned from. And I'm just so excited to see how this path continues for both of us.
Thank you. No, I mean this, like, thank you for putting up with me on the onboarding process because I had a million questions, but you've definitely given me a huge breath, more than a breath of fresh air, and just reinvigorated the journey. Because I was on the other side for many years, so it's been
Yeah.
an honor, man. Yeah, I'm really grateful for our friendship and for being on the journey as partners in this world that this mortgage life we chose, and I'm loving it.
Love it. Last question for you. How does anyone get a hold of Chris Pessy if they want to? Is there a website, a general link, something quick and easy if anyone wanted to reach out to become
Yeah,
one of your new friends?
awesome. Yeah, you can go to chrispessy.com.
Well, really appreciate today. This was great. And look forward to talking to you a lot more as the days come.
Yeah, this was
Thanks again.
fun. Let's do it again. Same time next week.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks,
Awesome,
Chris.
man. See ya. Bye-bye.